Okay, let me begin the third session. I'll begin on time so that we can finish earlier. The first presenter is Mr. Kakagogolashvili. Thank you.
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much to all of you from Korean hosts, first of all, for inviting me to this excellent conference, and all of you for participating and listening each other and discussing. My presentation is about Georgia, which stands between Europe and Asia, and about public diplomacy, which is, to my view, also partly very much related with this strategic bridge which arises between Europe and Asia and goes through Georgia as well. So Georgia is at crossroads of Europe and Asia. You see on the map here, between Caspian and Black Sea, which is exactly the border between Europe and Asia, is situated Georgia. And this bridge is becoming more and more important every day and every year. Actually, we can call it strategic corridor that for centuries connected civilizations, trade routes, religions, cultures, and political systems. Historically, this space actually served not only as a bridge between East and West, bridge in positive sense, but also as an area where empires, identities, and geopolitical interests continuously interacted. And the processes unfolding along this corridor were not always driven by peace and cooperation. Even today, parts of the wider Black Sea and Caspian region, including the South Caucasus, continue to face interstate and intrastate tensions, unresolved conflicts, and competing geopolitical visions. At the same time, the history of this corridor teaches an important lesson. Sustainable development, connectivity, and prosperity are difficult to achieve without dialogue, without diplomacy, and mutual understanding among the actors involved. Peaceful cooperation requires not only political will, but also a realistic understanding of the interests, security concerns, the strategic priorities of all participating countries. In this context, public diplomacy becomes especially important, helping to promote trust, reduce misunderstanding, and encourage dialogue and compromise among societies and political actors. The role of major powers is also critically important in our region especially. In the contemporary world, external actors should move beyond traditional approaches based on domination. Spheres of influence or exclusionary geopolitical competition. Instead, large powers should contribute as stabilizing and constructive participants supporting peace, connectivity, economic cooperation, and regional development. At the same time, countries located within this strategic corridor, especially small and medium-sized states, should not be treated merely as objects of geopolitical competition. Their interests, sovereignty, security concerns, and development priorities must remain an integral part of regional cooperation frameworks and international initiatives. The future stability of the wider Europe-Asia connectivity space will depend not only on cooperation among regional states, but also on the ability of major powers to pursue pragmatic, cooperative, and non-discriminatory relations. While larger actors naturally possess greater resources, long-term stability can emerge only through inclusive cooperation based on mutual respect and shared benefits rather than exclusion or domination. For countries such as Georgia, diplomacy therefore carries a dual responsibility, strengthening cooperation among regional actors while encouraging constructive engagement between small states and major powers in pursuit of peace, connectivity, and common prosperity. The dissolution of the Soviet Union fundamentally transformed the geopolitical landscape of the, I think we can move. These are, I think, talking about corridor connectivity, which is now under question, and not under question, but under development, and which creates opportunities for this region, requires trust, stability, and cooperation between all parties involved that I just mentioned. The dissolution of the Soviet Union fundamentally transformed the geopolitical landscape of the wider Eurasian region. The independence of the South Caucasus and Central Asian states opened previously closed political, economic, and connectivity spaces to broader international engagement and cooperation. If you see the maps which geopolitical scientists developed in the beginning of the century, 20th century, and later, even in 40s, in 50s of the last century, you could see that all this area, like Central Asia and South Caucasus, were included in so-called heartland area and closed from the relations, interaction with the so-called maritime world, if we talk with the established geopolitical notions. And if you see the later maps, then now you can see that these areas have become like bridges, so interacting with both, with continental powers of Asia and with maritime powers of Europe or any other space around. The independence of the South Caucasus and Central Asia states opened previously closed political, economic, and connectivity space to broader international engagement and cooperation. This creates opportunities This creates opportunities for new opportunities for reconnecting Europe and Asia through transport, energy, trade, and communication corridors, which my colleague from Azerbaijan was talking about, crossing the Black Sea and South Caucasus, the Caspian Sea, and the Central Asia. Among the first international actors to approach this development strategically was the European Union. And I remember myself, as I served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, how European Union projects first started developing this potential or realizing potential of this Euro-Asia corridor. There were two important projects, Traseka and Dinogate, which European Union started in early 90s. And also European Union established so-called Energy Charter Treaty. All countries of the region, Black Sea and Caspian Sea region countries, Central Asia, South Caucasus, and even other Black Sea countries, including Ukraine and Eastern European countries, they signed this treaty in order to regulate the transportation, free transportation, free transit of energy resources through this region. This was, I think, very important project because WTO usually was not efficient in order to provide this trade regime of free transit through, or to support or to monitor even this free transit of energy resources. And that was very important, I think. But not only European Union, United States also contributed a lot politically in the development of this East-West energy corridor. And this was Western, I would say, Western projects. But later, China has become also very interested in this. This is very positive, actually, that China developed its Belt and Road Initiative that covered many directions, going from China to Europe, to Africa, to other countries. But one of important direction was the terrestrial corridors from China to Europe, and they had different branches. And the branch which goes now, according to Chinese project, which goes now through the South Caucasus, is so-called Middle Corridor. It appears that, of course, the Northern Corridor, which goes through Kazakhstan, China, Kazakhstan, and then Russia, it is with stronger capacity at this moment. It carries more cargoes and a little bit faster than Middle Corridor. But Middle Corridor appears more stable in terms of relations between countries and in terms of stability and security of transportation as well. We now see that because of this Russian conflict in Ukraine, the Northern Corridor has become quite risky to use. So this corridor, which I'm talking about, Middle Corridor, practically is not serving only for development of trans-European transport network, but trans-Europe-Asia transport network, but also for any kind of connectivity. And also the new projects related to energy transfers through the Black Sea, from Azerbaijan to West. It goes through Georgia as well. Many other projects related to oil, gas, and communication lines, and internet, etc. This region is very important in this regards. Recent geopolitical developments also create new possibilities for regional transformation. The ongoing reconciliation between Armenia and Azerbaijan may contribute to the opening of additional transportation and communication routes across the South Caucasus, further diversifying regional connectivity and strengthening economic interdependence. I think that one thing is that the peace is very important for the region, and the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict was, of course, very big negatively attracting, negative attraction for the region, for investments, for different type of projects, interstate projects, etc. So this problem resolved is very important for Georgia as well, despite the fact that, of course, Georgia loses its exclusivity on being transit country between Europe and Asia, but it gains much more because of the stability of the region and because the region becomes more attractive. In this context, the South Caucasus increasingly represents not merely a transit region, but an emerging strategic space where Europe, Asia, and major global actors interact economically, politically, and diplomatically. The future success this about Georgia, what I just was talking, that Georgia represents, of course, the possibility for transit routes, but it represents also a possibility for European aspirations, which comes the democracy building, of course, the initiatives, deep historical links with Asia, having deep historical links with Asia, and multicultural experience. Also dialogue-oriented diplomacy. That's what Georgia can explore and can use in this. And Georgia can contribute not only to transit, but also to communication and understanding between all nations in this region. I think, yes, the future success of this connectivity architecture will depend on whether regional and global actors are able to transform geopolitical competition into cooperative and mutually beneficial engagement. I think there was already mentioned that public diplomacy doesn't go only through traditional soft power. And it was a very interesting debate regarding the military strength of Turkey, very interesting question. If it can be used as a public diplomacy also tool, even military development, because attraction of the countries is not only soft power, but also the security potential to provide security, And public diplomacy goes beyond traditional soft power, which was based before on cultural cooperation and cultural mutual understanding and dialogue between cultures, etc. Traditionally, public diplomacy was associated with cultural promotion, educational exchange, tourism, and international image building. Today, however, it is increasingly extends far beyond culture alone. In a world marked by geopolitical fragmentation, information warfare, disinformation, and declining trust between societies, public diplomacy is becoming an important instrument for building strategic trust, supporting dialogue, and strengthening international cooperation. This transformation is especially important in regions located at geopolitical crossroads, and such as South Caucasus and the wider Europe-Asia corridor, where political, economic, and security interests intersect simultaneously. Sustainable cooperation in such regions cannot rely only on infrastructure or trade agreements. It also requires mutual confidence among societies, political elites, business actors, and international partners. Modern public diplomacy therefore includes strategic communication, academic and expert dialogue, digital diplomacy, civil society interaction, and long-term trust-building mechanisms. Dialogue in mechanisms. Yes, in this context, economic corridors also require that may be called trust corridors. Frameworks of dialogue and mutual understanding capable of supporting peaceful cooperation among states with different historical experiences and geopolitical orientations. At the same time, public diplomacy should not become an instrument of manipulation or geopolitical exclusion. Its constructive role lies in encouraging inclusive dialogue, mutual respect, and cooperative engagement among both regional and global actors. For countries such as Georgia, public diplomacy carries an additional responsibility. Georgia's historical experience of coexistence and interaction between different civilizations creates opportunities not only to participate in regional cooperation, but also to contribute actively to dialogue-oriented and connectivity-based international relations. Ultimately, successful public diplomacy today depends less on the ability to dominate narratives and more on the capacity to generate credibility, trust, openness, and constructive engagement across political and cultural boundaries. Now, a little bit, a few words about European integration. Yes, European integration serves, for Georgia at least, as for Georgian citizens who are, Georgia became candidate country 2 years ago, as you know, and majority of Georgia citizens, they are in favor of joining European Union. So far, European integration serves as a kind of model for us, for diplomacy, for cooperation, and for connect our interests to each other. For Georgia, European integration represents not only a foreign policy orientation, but also a broader strategic vision connected to peace, institutional development, democratic governance, economic modernization, and cooperation, cooperative regional relations. The European Union itself emerged from one of the most conflict-prone historical environments in the modern world. Not only modern, but historically, most wars in the world happened in the European continent. Actually, they say statistically, this was the continent full of rivalries. After centuries of wars, rivalries, territorial disputes, and destructive confrontations, European states gradually developed mechanisms of cooperation capable of transforming historical antagonism into long-term interdependence and institutionalized partnership. In this sense, the European integration project demonstrated that sustainable peace can be strengthened not only through military deterrence or balance of power arrangements, but also through economic interdependence, shared institutions, legal frameworks, and continuous political dialogue. Over time, the European Union evolved into one of the most advanced examples of supranational cooperation in contemporary international relations, while preserving national sovereignty and cultural diversity. EU member states simultaneously developed common mechanisms for economic cooperation, regulatory harmonization, infrastructure development, mobility, political consultation, and collective decision-making. The experience became increasingly important, not only for Europe itself, but also for neighboring countries. We know the phenomena how actually Europeanization covers whole European region now, beyond the European Union. The Central and Eastern Europe part became already the part of European Union, and Southeast Europe, like the Balkan states, they are also candidate countries there. But this is not only about joining European Union, but transforming themselves, that becoming the same, taking the same type of model like European Union has in these regards. A model of peaceful cooperation among states, a rules-based institutional environment, a framework for economic and infrastructural integration, and a space where small and medium-sized countries can participate in collective processes with equality, greater predictability, and legal protection. The EU engagement in the wider Black Sea region, Eastern Partnership area, and South Caucasus has therefore carried significance beyond purely economic cooperation. Through infrastructure initiatives, regulatory cooperation, educational exchange, institutional support, and connectivity programs, the European Union contributed to the development of broader spaces of interaction and interdependence across the Europe-Asia corridor. I would like to mention also one important project, this Trans-European Networks, which is a very big project and financed heavily by European Union. It connects all European member states, and EIB also, European Investment Bank, is actively involved in it. Connects all European member states, but some 10 or a little bit more years ago, they started development projects with outside of Europe. And they coming to our region as well, I mean, Black Sea Caspian region. Out of 10 trans-European corridors, which is railway and highway corridors, 4 already reached the Black Sea, and they're trying to connect these corridors with Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and further Central Asia. And this is very important, I think, to connect for Asian countries, for European countries. In the same time, the contemporary international environment presents growing challenges to cooperative regional orders. Geopolitical polarization, military conflicts, economic fragmentation, energy insecurity, and strategic competition increasingly affects both Europe and the wider Eurasian space. Precisely because of these challenges, the experience of European integration remains highly relevant. It demonstrates that even historically divided regions can gradually develop cooperative mechanisms capable of reducing confrontation and creating shared interests among states with different historical experience and political priorities. For Georgia, integration with European economic and institutional frameworks therefore represents both a national strategic choice and part of broader vision of peaceful connectivity between Europe and Asia. I think we go to challenges. Challenges to the connectivity of international environment. Despite the significant opportunities created by extending Europe-Asia connectivity, the contemporary international environment is increasingly characterized by geopolitical fragmentation, strategic rivalry, economic uncertainty, and growing competition among major powers. Transportation routes, energy supplies, digital infrastructure, logistics chains, and even information spaces are increasingly viewed through the prism of geopolitical influence and strategic competition. As a result, connectivity corridors generate not only cooperation, but also another side of this negative side of all of this, but also new forms of vulnerability. The wider Black Sea region, the South Caucasus, and parts of the post-Soviet space remain particularly sensitive to these dynamics. Interstate conflicts, unresolved territorial disputes, external political pressures, military confrontations, and competing geopolitical projects continue to affect regional stability and development prospects. At the same time, disinformation campaigns and polarized narratives increasingly influence public perceptions and political decision-making processes. Connectivity projects themselves may therefore become objects of geopolitical contestation rather than instruments of cooperation. For countries located along strategic corridors like Georgia, maintaining balanced and pragmatic foreign relations becomes increasingly difficult. Smaller states often face pressure to align exclusively with competing geopolitical centers instead of participating in broader frameworks of inclusive cooperation. At the same time, major powers bear increasing responsibility for preserving international stability. Attempts to establish exclusive spheres of influence or to marginalize the smaller states often produce mistrust and long-term instability. Under such conditions, diplomacy, public communication, and multilateral engagement acquire renewed strategic importance. Constructive public diplomacy may help counteract polarization by encouraging dialogue-oriented narratives, strengthening communication between societies, and supporting cooperation based on mutual respect rather than confrontation. The experience of recent decades demonstrates that sustainable connectivity cannot rely solely on economic logic. Even beneficial infrastructure and trade projects remain vulnerable where political trust collapses or geopolitical confrontation intensifies. Therefore, the future of the Europe-Asia connectivity space will depend not only on technological or financial capacity, but also on whether states and international actors are able to preserve strategic rationality, diplomatic responsibility, and cooperative vision with an increasingly complex international environment. And if I have time, just a few words about in conclusion. Yeah. In conclusion, just 3 minutes, and I will. I know this, I took a lot of time. So maybe I have here. Yeah, it's actually here as well. Yeah. The Europe and Asia connectivity space is becoming one of the key geopolitical and economic transformation zones of emerging international order. This is one. Second, that the growing interaction between Europe, the Black Sea, the South Caucasus, Central Asia, and broader Asia creates important opportunities for economic development, infrastructure modernization, energy cooperation, and political interaction. At the same time, this interconnected space remains exposed to geopolitical competition, unresolved conflicts, and strategic mistrust. Sustainable connectivity requires not only infrastructure, but also diplomatic dialogue, institutional cooperation, strategic patience, and mutual respect among states and societies. Public diplomacy today extends far beyond traditional cultural promotion. It increasingly serves as a mechanism for building trust, reducing fragmentation, and strengthening long-term cooperation. Countries located on geopolitical crossroads, such as Georgia, carry a special responsibility in promoting dialogue, connectivity, and peaceful engagement between different political and cultural spaces. Georgia seeks to contribute to a regional order based not on exclusion or domination, but on cooperation, openness, interdependence, and peaceful interaction between Europe and Asia. The future stability of the wider corridor will depend not only on regional countries themselves, but also on the ability of major powers to pursue cooperative, inclusive, and responsible policies. And finally, public diplomacy beyond culture should become a strategic instrument for supporting peaceful connectivity, responsible cooperation, and dialogue in an increasingly interdependent but fragmented international environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gogolashvili. Just to ask you a quick question. I'm not an expert on Georgia, so correct me if I'm wrong. But my perception or some images I have about Georgia is kind of ambiguous. It seems like, according to your presentation, Georgia is trying to have more connectivity with Europe, and also some bad luck of a lot of corridors linking Europe and Asia. So it seems like it's pretty much leaning towards Europe trying to be a member of the European Union, but I think there are still some major amount of Russia's influence within Georgia. So my question is, what do you think is the image of Georgia? That's my first question. And those, Georgia's public diplomacy to be within the networks, trans-European networks, and a lot of corridors are there linking Europe and Asia. Would these kinds of diplomacies of Georgia, I'm just wondering if those diplomacy might bring Russia, influence, more into Georgia. You know what I'm saying? I mean, would Russia not be concerned about Georgia trying to be, more deepened into European connectivity? So that's my question. Yeah. Next, Mr. Koichi Yonemura. Thank you.
PowerPoint 나와요? Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Koichi Yonemura, and I'm a newspaper reporter. So my take is not so academic. It's more like on the ground reporting. And from my title, I think I don't have to explain who Elon Musk is. And some may ask that which Pandora's box, because Elon Musk opened so many Pandora's box. So my point is I'd like to talk about social media, especially on X, formerly known as Twitter. And by the way, as a reporter, I've been covering East Asia for 20 years, Korean Peninsula and China. And as Sojan-nim pointed out, Japan, South Korea, China relationship, if we can cooperate smoothly, it will help, not only this region, but all over the world. But there are, of course, there are many points of antagonism between these countries, including historical issues between Japan and neighboring country. And so public sentiment is complex. And having said that, today I'd like to discuss how the combination of social media and AI is showing signs of new kind of conflict, and why we need to keep a close eye on this situation to ensure stability in East Asia. And among social media platforms, X has a high penetration rate in Japan, and X has approximately 70 million active users in Japan, which means 60% of the total population of 120 million uses it. So in terms of active users, Japan ranks second only to the United States. And considering that of South Korea has approximately 10 million users, representing 20% of its population. So 60% and 20%. So you can see the popularity in Japan is striking. And furthermore, according to X-Product Manager, Japanese users spend the most time on X globally, more than 8 hours per month. And in late March, some of you already noticed that late March of this year, X launched a full-scale AI-powered automatic translation, and posts are now translated automatically without users pressing any button. So Japanese posts can be translated into many languages and shown to users around the world through X algorithm. And because of this AI-powered automatic translation, recently we call it American barbecue incident, happened in Japan. And one manga artist in Nagasaki posted a drawing of US soldiers cooking bacon and wrote that he often saw American soldiers happily eating in local restaurant in Nagasaki, which has a US naval base there. And the post was automatically translated into English and received 25 million viewers. And as you know, X, you can quote someone's post and put your comment on that. So someone put comment that I want to join an American barbecue party someday in Japanese. Then it translated it in English and received 46 million views. And what happened next was remarkable. Large numbers of Americans responded by posting photos of local barbecue restaurants, homemade smoked meat, and backyard grilling parties. Look at those kind of posting was so many of them appeared in X. And as a result, it was happened in late March. And at the weekend of the next weekend, the American-style barbecue restaurant in Tokyo and Osaka became fully booked. because of this incident. And also, similar interactions are also taking place between Koreans and Japanese. One Japanese said, "Hey, Koreans, I love that seaweed paste that's sold in Japan as Kankok nori." Kankok nori means Korean seaweed paste. And then it was, how can I say, it garnered 31 million impressions. And it was followed by a similar things happened, followed by a flood of replies from Koreans introducing their own favorites or local specialty seaweeds. So this is kind of a friendly interactions, but of course, there are also concerns. We all know that social media can create friendly exchanges, but it can also create conflict. So one of the typical headaches of the Japanese government and the general public or intellectual is the existence of historical revisionist. And in early April, one Japanese comment stating that, well, this morning my daughter learned about the Nanjing massacre, which happened in China. So I was astonished because it didn't happen. So now I have to tell her that that is wrong and it never happened. And this comment was viewed by 12 million people, and mostly who rebutted to this comment was mostly in English or Chinese. And by the way, for your information, that the Japanese government's official position about Nanjing massacre is that the occurrence of massacre and looting in Nanjing cannot be denied. And although there is a debate regarding the number of victims, no mainstream scholar denies that at least tens of thousands of people were killed there. So, this is about what I picked up is the article of Chinese media about, they reported about that comment and that incident. So I think many people who are involved in Japan's public diplomacy still do not appear to fully recognize the reputational risks created by machine translation and globalized social media communication. And also there are, it's not related to AI translation, but there have been previous instances where posts on X by high-ranking government officials have had a significant impact on diplomatic relations. And most recently, in November of last year, China's Consul General in Osaka posted on X regarding Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi's parliamentary remarks on Taiwan contingency issues. And this Consul General posted in Japanese that he was very angry at the remarks of Prime Minister Takaichi and stated that we have no choice but cut off the filthy head without a moment of hesitation. And of course, it was circulated in Japanese X timelines. And so the Japanese government didn't have a choice to formally So they formally protested the statement to the Chinese government. But a bit complicated, but from China's perspective, they were already angry about the Prime Minister Takaichi's statement. And while they were angry, Japanese government protested about this X comment by Council General. So from many China experts in Japan's point of view, and I agree with that this posting definitely affects the way of thinking of Chairman Xi Jinping in China, and it became one factor contributing to the continuing deterioration of Japan-China relations. So I think taking all of these developments into consideration, Japan must now conduct its public diplomacy with the understanding that the post written every day by 70 million Japanese people may be automatically translated and spread around the world, and potentially leading to international scrutiny. But also, I am a kind of positive thinking person, optimistic. There is some positive aspect on AI translation. Because thanks to this machine translation, Japanese users on X are becoming more and more aware that their posts are no longer seen only by other Japanese users. They are being seen by people around the world. And although Japan has long been an important member of the international community, but also we are often described as somewhat inward-looking compared with many other countries. And there is evidence here that if you look at the passport ownership rate, according to Josun Ilbo, South Korean people have 60% of South Korean people have a passport, but just only 18% of Japanese have passports. So it shows the lack of overseas travel experience among Japanese people, and also this English proficiency score of the English proficiency test. Look, the highest is the South Korea, and the Japan is the lowest score among East Asian countries. So, but because of this AI translation, and another point is the growing number of foreign tourists in Japan, these development is now start changing our attitude to the world. As you can see the graph, just within 10 years ago, we only have around 10 million foreign tourists in Japan, but now there are more than 40 million tourists in Japan. So people in Japan need to practice English more, and because of this AI translation, we have to think how people in the world are looking at us. So this kind of process of internationalization is not always smooth, and it sometimes creates friction and tension. Nevertheless, I believe it has a potential to encourage a more open and outward-looking mindset among the Japanese public. And so if you haven't been to Japan yet, so please visit Japan to help us to become more open and outward people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yonemura. Very interesting that Japanese people like X so much. Why do they like X so much? Because in case of Korean people, X is very much like what the United States people are using. So seems like from South Korean people's perspective, X is something that is over there, not something like a Facebook or some other things. So I'm just wondering why Japanese people especially like to use X. Another question is there any case that Japanese government or any parliamentary uh, uh, people use X? That will be a part of the public diplomacy the Japanese government uses all these SNSs for. So, thank you. And lastly but not least, Nashakantoja. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And it's a hard time, I know. It's just a time to wind up. Everybody's just finish it off and then we'll wind up. I'll just run through you a small presentation and I would like to squeeze my conversation short, precise, and effective so that it conveys a good message to all of you. May I request at the back to run the presentation? In fact, just one more thing. I'm a little bit confused. What is my topic? So because the theme which is running is public diplomacy beyond the culture. And the presentation which I had prepared is about the nuclear. Nevertheless, it happens sometime. We'll try to merge everything and give you on the platters. We'll come up with a new abbreviation that will be the nuclear diplomacy. Okay, so if you can just run the presentation if you have with you or should. Nope. Okay. So I'll just give a preliminary talk about towards the public diplomacy. I'm not I'm not a person who has got the proficiency in the diplomacy, but working with the government and with the different other regions like Middle East, West Asia, Asian countries, and I got some proficiency about the public diplomacy. In fact, I gathered some information, some expertise when I was posted in Sudan. There I got the real definition about what the diplomacy means. So for me, as of now, I'm a little bit against what all we have discussed here. For me, diplomacy is something different. Diplomacy is something, an art, which basically diplomats, the country takes and try to communicate to the different environment in a positive way about the culture, about the tradition, about the strength, about the countries and all those. But things have changed. Things has gone much more in a different direction. So when we are talking about diplomacy, for me, the world has entered into an era where influence is measured not merely by admiration, but by strategy relevance. Whoever is playing their strategy is basically a master in the public diplomacy. We are talking about diplomacy in different contexts. I came across certain terminology in the public diplomacy. My senior taught me one thing. Nishikant, don't talk about diplomacy. Here, talk something about the military diplomacy. Here, talk something about the economic diplomacy. Here, talk about the knowledge diplomacy. We are changing, and that diplomacy doesn't stick at one level. It keeps on changing on environment to environment, country to country, time to time. So you should be a master in basically having a 360-degree perspective of the diplomacy, where we are talking about all the gambits. We'll talk something about strength about India because I belong to India, how we are playing the public diplomacy, how we are capturing the diplomacy. India is a country which was, as of the last 14, 15 years, I have seen the diplomacy has risen into a kind of a different level. whether it's a EU, whether it's a Middle East, whether it is a West Asia, whether it is a Central Africa, whether we are talking about the Asian, everybody we have tried to capture. We are trying to reach everybody, and that basically is something that everybody should be connected with everybody. It should not be merely like a block which talks only about the Quad, which talks about the BRICS, which talks about Central Africa, which talks about the Asian, which talks about the Southeast Asia. No. It's something we want to reach everywhere. And that's the reason how the EU head of the delegation got their office based in India. We were not having any dialogues with EU. We are not a member of NATO. It's far, far away. But now see the diplomacy, how it is moving, how we are getting connected with each other. I was discussing one thing with the EU head of the delegation. I said, why don't you have a kind of a diplomatic exercise with the Middle East countries? He said, it's a little bit looking awkward, but we can. So this is something we are talking about. The diplomacy is going in at a different level. We are talking about the diplomacy, about the technology diplomacy. India conducted the AI mission. We conducted an AI summit, which was fabulous. I mean, we tried to work on, to integrate. It was not something we wanted to show about the AI. It was basically a kind of diplomacy where all the strength of the different countries can be integrated with each other. The country from Azerbaijan, the country from Russia, the country from China, everybody. We are trying to bring them at one common platform, at one common page. So diplomacy, it's not only talking about a political drift. We are not talking about any security agencies or something like we want to collect some intelligence, something. No, diplomacy is not like that. It has a lot of other variations we are talking about. Economic diplomacy. I would like to give you a beautiful example about the China. I mean, we should learn something from the China. I have traveled a little bit about this different regions, and now I'm planning to go to the Latin America also. China, I was thinking that China is only focusing on the Asian countries or Southeast Asia or in their particular region. But when I gathered the data, I mean, it's something. In the total investment in 25 and 26, they have spent something in Africa, 50% of their entire budget about the investment they have spent in Africa. GCC country, 30%, Asian, 18%, Latin America, 2%. That's basically, and that's the reason wherever you go, you will find the Chinese. Their entities are already established there. They are working very effectively. They are not looking for a short term or something. That's why I tell my government also that you have to be patient when you are talking about the diplomacy. It's not like that you target a country and you just go there, invest something, and then move forward. So it's the data which is coming from the Chinese in the 25, 26. It's something they have covered the entire world. No region has been left. Whether we are talking about now, I was talking to the Vice President of Guyana. He was in one of the visits in India. He said, we have got a lot of investment from the China. I was talking to different other countries. I visited Iran thrice. And there was a lot of Chinese investment there. So in 2005 and 7, I was in Russia. And the kind of the deep bonding between the Chinese and the Russians in the field of the infrastructures, in the field of the technology, in the field of the military strength, you cannot imagine. So how long they have been working. That's basically we are talking about the diplomacy. Diplomacy is not that I come here and I delivered a lecture and that Jesus Christ, the journey ends. It's something we have to pour the seeds and start working on that particular thing. And this is one of the effective platform where we are working. Think tanks. Knowledge diplomacy is there from where you can penetrate. There is no restriction on that. But it's not the diplomacy. I'm talking about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which gives a scholarship grant. And the 5 students, 20 students come here, they take the lectures or the courses, and then they go away. The journey ends. No. this is kind of a think tanks or the public forums where we should speak, and those things should be recorded. And then it should be published and brought to the knowledge of the government. I was discussing with one of the think tank in US. He said, in the DC, Washington, you have more than 500 think tanks. So this is something which we have to think out. In India, we don't have. I think we have only around 50, 60 think tanks which are working. And that also, I don't know at what level, 2 or 3. ORF is there, which is basically from the India, which organizes your rational dialogues and everything. So this is something which we need to talk about the diplomacy. Talking about the US technology and diplomacy, that should be, I want to flag it. The Chips and Science Act, they conducted the AUKUS, the COD technology, the maritime, the airtime, you name them, the US is everywhere in all kind of diplomacy. So that's something, see the vision. And when we are talking about, I'm not talking about the other countries, I'm talking about, especially for the India, when we are trying to talk to them, okay, no, let's concentrate on the BRICS first. Baba, the day you will do a diplomacy on the BRICS, COD is bound. When you target COD, new COD is bound. Every day the blocks are multiplying and new things are coming out. So how you can say that? I'm just trying to give you a feel, something like that. Iran, I just wanted to tell you, Iran, because Iran was the things which needs to be praised, it has to be praised. It's not like that I'm very fond of Iran or I'm very fond of, say, Russia or anything. But the kind of the diplomacy which they did, it's a mind-blowing. I was talking to the diplomats of Iran before this war started 3 months back. And then they told me, Doctor, we are at the tip of our negotiation and our uranium, the nuclear deal will be finalized. We are coming up with a negotiation very soon. It was regime of Obama that time. And they said, we are having a very effective diplomacy which is going on. Diplomacy is not, it can be used anywhere. See the beauty what they did. The backdoor, the 1.5 and 2.0 diplomacy which they took, they bide the time. And that time, buying of the time, they created a kind of accumulated the pressure. And then the regional connectivity, the regional diplomacy which they took on the Qatar and the Oman, they started working for them. That's something, a strategic diplomacy we are talking about. The JCPO, they were working on the JCPO, they are working for the IAA, and everything was going to be finalized. Till the regime changed. The new president of the POTUS came and subsequently things gone in a different direction. So this is the real diplomacy we are talking about. EU, India, we have never thought in dreams also. And used to talk to the head of the delegation, he said, Her Excellency, she said, EU, what EU will do? And when I speak to the MOFA people in my country, they say, are you gone mad? What we will do with EU? What is their relevance? And now you see they have signed working on 2 major projects. One, they have signed the India-EU FTA, and the other is the Global Gateway Initiative, which has been launched by the EU. We have got a dedicated EU head of the delegation based in capital New Delhi, which is working very closely with India in the area of the defense, in the area of the infrastructure, in the area of energy. One more example I would like to give it to you about India. 2015, we started. So I'm not saying that it's basically everything comes for the reason. Sometimes diplomacy starts with a kind of a strategic tool. It has to be used. 2015, we created an organization which was known as International Solar Alliance, which was under the Paris Convention Treaty, and it was a dream project of Prime Minister Modi. In just span of 3 years, we got 120 countries signed the agreement. 104 rectified. that is working, we were working where we have brought all the countries on one common platform and under one soil. That's we are talking about. I'm not praising about that. We are only talking about the India. I'm talking about the diplomacy tools and the way which should be used. So that's something which I thought I should bring to your notice. And for the China, we are already, as you can see the diplomacy which they are working, digital Silk Road. They are working with diplomacy. You know, China has worked very strategically with Indian government. And in fact, in our telecom infrastructure, it's a huge investment by the China. So Huawei was there, Huawei company. And now, because of some of the diplomatic blockade and something, so the government decided, okay, now we have to move a little bit away from China and we should start doing some kind of indigenization so that the security and the sovereignty of the country remains with us. Now, the diplomacy which started working, now they are working very closely and bringing the Huawei and basically the ZT together to work effectively and take this project roll on. In India, it's something like that. If you talk about some countries which we are not having a very cordial relationship, some differences, not big differences. So China has been seen one of the country where we have got the security issues, our data and many things. I don't know from where it populated because I'm a person of the AI. I think if my data needs to be with me, nobody can hack the data from me till I want, till I get the access, till I give the access, sorry, not take the access. So it's something, it kind of a fume which got generated and that fume went all across and people started talking about a lot of things. And that's basically we are talking about where our country, India, blocks around 74 apps at first shot from the China. So I'm just saying that how the narrative diplomacy, how the backdoor diplomacy, how the perception diplomacy works, that's a very critical thing which we should be very cautious. India, we are working, India Semiconductor Mission we are, India Middle East, Europe Corridor, digital diplomacy infrastructure. We are working. When I interacted once, I'm sorry, I just 2 minutes more. When I was interacting with MOFA, I went and met one of the secretary. I said, you have any technology diplomacy department here? He said, yes, we have got NEST. I said, what is NEST? I have not heard about NEST. He said, no, this is new emerging strategic technology department under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I said, what they do? They said, the terms of reference of this department is to have a bilateral relationship and a diplomatic relationship with all the countries for the technology transfer and technology agreements. That's how the CERT A, the CERT UK, the CERT US, the CERT IN, they all got integrated. So digital infrastructure we are working. Like we are trying out, every blocks has created its own. Like when the dawn of the AI is coming. I don't know, I did my postdoc in 2012 from Denmark, but I'm still very not, you can say, I don't believe that AI will take over the job or AI is just mastering. No. My principal, my professor taught me one thing, right technology for the right person, for the right job, at the right place, at the right cost is the principle. You cannot just take AI and implement everywhere. And AI will say, okay, Jesus Christ, you sit down, I'll take. No. If it would have been, you have seen the disaster which has happened in Israel. Sorry, the Palestine, Gaza. They used the two software which was AI enabled for identifying the extremist group there, and the data which they collected was 2 years back. And the software which they used was the Gospel and Lavender. When the data was pulled, fetched, cleansed and engaged, The AI was not, the drone was not in my position to understand. He was believing that the target still remains the same, but the target has moved from that particular location to some other location 2 years back. But the data which they collected was the same. So the bird was not the drone. The bird was not in position to understand, to identify those things. It simply went, targeted, but the casualty, there was schools, there was hospitals, there was many other things where the things had been moved 2 years back. So it's something, there is always a pros and cons of the technology. AI cannot rule. We don't believe that it can be imposed everywhere. The day you leave everything on the machine will kill you. It will block you, everything. And we started believing these things about the AI, the new emerging technologies now. I'm telling you, 2012, I gave my defense. And we have matured. That time, that university has matured and they were doing something else about the IoT and AI and the future generation network. Nevertheless, so I'm just trying to tell you that diplomacy is having its footprint everywhere. What kind of diplomacy? Like nuclear. I mean, come on. Now, in India, nuclear is not allowed to the private companies. But there is a lot of licensing and, the advocacy and the diplomacy started. Basically, that the private entity should come in because we need those things. Sooner or later, energy is required by everyone, and for that, nuclear is not only used for bombs, it is used for the reactors which will give us the energy. So we need those things. And soon, that's the reason how the Indian government has now opened the doors, is opening the, not open, but has opening the doors for the private companies to come. In South Korea is one of the, you can say, potential countries who are trying to work with the Indian government in the field of the reactors. They will come. They're working. Let me just give you one example of the South Korea, and because since I'm on the soil of the South Korea as of now, in India, I'm just giving you a ground level findings about how the relationship. We thought that we want to work very closely with South Korea. And basically in the strategic areas. It's not something we are talking about any specific generic. The government is very much interested in working the strategic areas. We are talking about the energy, we are talking about the submarines, we are talking about the defense, many other things are there. The only problem is there that you cannot always work G to G. There should be some kind of a mechanism for the private entities, like you need to have a kind of an ecosystem which basically entertains and join hands, shake hands with the private entities also. That is the bottleneck which I thought, because I'm on the floor, so I should brought to your notice. Rest, everything is good, and the relationship with South Korea is emerging. It's getting very positive, and hopefully these two countries will work very strategically in due course of time. And our defense minister was here. He has given a lot of things. And initially, our Indian High Commissioner was called in MOFA, and he was told to work very strategically with the South Korea. So everything is aligned. And again, for my last words, I just want to thank you all. And hopefully, I'll give my presentation tomorrow. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for such a detailed explanations of India's diplomacy. India is very quickly developing in tech and green energy and all these things, all these industry areas. Just to go back to a fundamental question about public diplomacy of India, what is India is trying to look like? What is the image that India wants to make about itself? That's the question. Yeah. Any questions from the audience before I ask the presenters to answer the questions? Yes. Oh, 2 people. Wow. Okay.
Thanks for the presentation. That's very insightful. I'm Sita, a research fellow from National University of Singapore. I have a question to Prof. Kaha. So you mentioned in one of your earlier slide about connectivity creates opportunity, it builds on trust, stability, and cooperation. So I'm just wondering whether stability in this statement you mean the stability in the external diplomacy or the domestic stability, because what I come across often in my work is for energy infrastructure that require a long-term investment, that require stability within the domestic political in terms of like changing administration every 5 years doesn't mean change in the policy. So how energy infrastructure can persist even though administration changes every 5 years or so. So that's my question to you. And I have a question for Prof. Ocha about the diplomacy and more like more than bilateral diplomacy, because bilateral diplomacy seems easier than multilateral diplomacy. So for example, in Southeast Asia, we have ASEAN, which is our vehicle for diplomacy within the region. And that, to my understanding, in its inception, first is to build a peace within the region. And then now it bordered into energy cooperation, energy diplomacy, and so on and so forth. But there is a challenge in achieving those multilateral diplomacy for such purpose of energy or other purpose. So you have any thoughts on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thank the presenters for their insightful presentations, remarks. I have two questions. The first one is to Mr. Gugulashvili. It is about Anaklia Port. You talked about a middle corridor, the connectivity projects. One of the bottlenecks in middle corridor is the Anaklia Port, which if opens, would actually upgrade the capabilities and capacity of middle corridor significantly. Could you briefly talk about the present situation in that project? What's going on? I remember that some Chinese companies were involved in the project, but in late March, some American diplomats visited Anaklia Port. It looks like it changed hands. So therefore, it will be quite interesting to hear your thoughts about it. And the next question is to Mr. Yonemura about the situation between Japan and China. You talked about some positive developments going on, intergovernmental level of exchanges, but at the same time, we observe growing militarization in the region, particularly between Japan and China. So how can you explain it, and whether it is related with Taiwan Station or East China Sea Station? Thank you.
Please. You have a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for questions. This is another opportunity to express some things that maybe I could not express during my presentation. First of all, the ambiguity of Georgian politics, absolutely right and true observation that Georgia's, whatever I was talking, it was from the wishful thinking, maybe in certain manners, in not only just wishful thinking, but the pragmatic view, how it should be, but not always everything is how it should be. And at this moment in Georgia, many people and scholars, including diplomats, former diplomats, many people who participated in development of the concept of East Asia, Europe corridor. And I would like to say that Georgia contributed a lot. Together with Azerbaijani President Aliyev, Georgian President Shevardnadze, and in this tandem, I would say, together, they lobbied a lot. There was very strong diplomacy from their side, lobbied with big powers, big economic and political powers, in order to support this corridor. I was talking that Americans supported the energy corridor and the Europeans created the Straseca, etc. It was not just from the air. The regional, they support a lot. And not only just them as a personalities, but people who used to work there in ministries of foreign affairs, in the ministries of economies, of energy, etc. Many. So these people now are, of course, disappointed. Disappointed in many things, despite the fact that Georgia remained. This was very strong idea, actually, Europe-Asia corridor, and Georgia as a country remained loyal to this idea. Yes, that's right. But it's not about criticizing governments, I understand this forum, but I can tell that we are not satisfied how the government deals with this objective, and if everything is done in this regards. And here I can say that ambiguity comes from the same notion that I was stressing, that big powers should not, in a good sense, seek for domination. Why I prized European Union? Because European Union, when it started its Eurasia corridor projects, energy or transport or connectivities, and even now working, this is to my view, the only big power, European Union, if we can say that European power, it's a big power. It's a big economic power, but not consolidated political power yet. But still, it's a big power. How it approach it to this without intention to dominate the countries or to compete with others. That was their approach was complementary, and I think that it was very right approach. As regards to Russia, that I may go to another question also that you kindly posed to me. Russia's negative role was in this old paradigm of strategic dominance and military presence, pressure, creating bottlenecks and using exclusivity rights for transportation, especially for energy supplies, for example, to Europe or any other regions of the world. This is very old mind approach, which is contradictory to whatever we talked. If we want to develop a really corridor without cooperation, without mutual understanding of interests, and without also big powers understanding each other's interests and balancing not only each other's, but also medium and small phase. This is maybe a little bit socialist views, I would say, egalitarian, which maybe not happens all the time in the world. But this is the only way to reach efficiency in this case. There are too many countries. So Georgia's ambiguity comes also from this Russian pressure. That when this government started 12 years ago, and stays too much, 12 years is too much for a democratic country, of course, the government stays at power, its approach was correct and quite continuous, continuing the same support for the corridor and for the right things in this regards. But little by little, they started experiencing strong pressure from the Russian government, which of course creates now these problems. Many people in Georgia are convinced that this ambiguity comes exactly from one dominating powers in the region. This is Russia. And that is big struggle also because of this. Now, I think Sita's question was very, very, if it is okay with you. So if you are satisfied with the response, yes. Yes, I go to the next question. Connectivity creates opportunity and stability of external or domestic stability. So you're absolutely right that when I mentioned stability, I didn't distinguish between internal stability of states and external stability as the security of the region. Both are very important. I absolutely agree with you. Talking about internal stability maybe it's a little bit more difficult when it's an international conference and we talk about behavior of states mainly, but not behavior of states inside. But actually, these are interlinked, absolutely interlinked. And if internal stability is not guaranteed, then, but again, I come back to the European Union, European policies. Why I support, I'm a strong supporter of European policies, because European policy, external policy, is very much linked with promotion of internal stability of countries. So creating bottlenecks exist not only in transportation, but bottlenecks exist in relations between internal actors as well. So European Union tries, especially in Georgia, for example, or in other countries that they deal, to inspire the countries for the dialogue, internal dialogue, and the external actions of the country should be in compliance with internal people's will and with internal consensus in the country. If in Azerbaijan, for example, there is no consensus inside of the country whether they need or not this way through Armenia, for example, linking Azerbaijan with Nakhichevan through Armenia, if there is no consensus inside, for the government would be very difficult to realize this project. And absolutely agree with you. And I would like to say that this is both important, and I think the country should work on this. And continuity of the energy project, you say 5 years, but in democratic states, usually the regimes, they change in every 5-6 years, or in some other cases 4 years. This is normal. But what is important that I mentioned that in Georgia, despite of changing the governments, we had continuity of certain policies, including energy policy. And there are also in international relations the parliamentary level commitments, so ratification instruments. If previous government signed an agreement and it was ratified by parliament, it's a law that cannot be changed easily, right? And that is important instrument. I think that used to work. And Anaklia, finally, Anaklia port. Yes, this is very big problem again. I would say that the government was not good and instrumental in this. Anaklia port, I wouldn't say that it creates now bottleneck. That whoever doesn't know, Anaklia is a Black Sea port project. It's not port yet. On the Black Sea, Georgia has 2 ports, operating ports. This is Batumi and Poti. More or less, they can deal with the amount of cargoes which come from Europe to Asia, or from Asia to Europe through Azerbaijan to Georgia, etc. At this moment, but potentially they will not be able to deal with increasing if middle corridor is really developed in a way that we imagine. They will not be able. So Anaklia was designed, the new port was designed especially to deal with this problem, to possibility of increasing operation of cargoes going from east to west, or from west to east. Georgian government was not very good in this. Actually, that it stopped because of particularist reasons. Stopped the project for years, and then it signed the contract with very suspicious Chinese company, saying frankly, because nobody was happy with this company. It was sanctioned and by US, and the company also was not very clean in many operations. And now the project is stuck. So I hope this will continue, because the government promised to continue this project, and let's see what will happen in the future. But just finalizing that, it is very important, of course, that Georgia is able to build this port for the future of East-West corridor. Thank you. Who is investing? This is the problem, that Americans were investing, but they tried to get some guarantees from the state, saying that their investment will not disappear if there will be some political changes. And the government did not give these guarantees. That's because the government was influenced by Russia, I can say, and this government denied. Then Chinese said that they would co-invest with Georgian government, 50-50. But as I told, first of all, this Chinese government was, not government, but Chinese company was not very reliable. And second thing is that Americans also were very disappointed. So there was, between big powers also, the struggle, as always. And finally, at this moment, it's not yet fully decided, but government has that it is committed to support financially the project. Let's see. Thank you.
So regarding first I would like to address your question that how the India is doing in the public diplomacy in the region. So I mean, it's effective and it's going well. And to just figure it out, I mean, I can tell you that we have got a good relationship with all the countries. Like we have a relationship with Russia, we have the relationship with France, we have the relationship with Iran, we have the relationship with Israel, we have the relationship with US. So you can see the kind of a diplomacy exercise we are doing. So, and we have got all this strategic alignment with them. US for the defense, Russia for the defense and energy, France for the defense infrastructure, Iran for the connectivity, and basically the other regional issues, regional assurance. And we are Israel, obviously the intelligence, and we are having a relationship with the cyber and other activities with Israel. So all countries where we are, we have got the very strategic and deep relationship with them. And that, I think, that's clarify how the public diplomacy is working within the region. And in fact, I would like to just about the Sita question. Yes, I totally agree with that. The regional diplomacy is the first step. I mean, we should be strong in that. And that's the reason I just like to give you an example. Like India is working very closely with the GCC. We are working very closely with the BRICS. So these are some of the things where we need to first have a good diplomacy exercise. Obviously, then we have to go to the multilateral diplomacy. So that's something which from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the question. About the why Japanese love eggs so much. There are many explanations, but the most persuasive one is Japanese people love the eggs, what you call anonymity. They don't have to reveal their name to log in the eggs. And generally speaking, well, my wife is Korean, so we, look Koreans and Japanese, and generally speaking, Korean people more easy to express themselves, and Japanese in a good word, more discreet and try to hide themselves. But if you don't have to reveal your name, then you can express your anger, your sadness more freely. That attracts Japanese people to X. That's one explanation. I'm not sure if it is true or not. And if the Japanese government is using social media for public diplomacy, Actually, not so much. Prime Minister Takaichi, of course, she has her own accounts, but honestly speaking, President Lee Jae-myung's posting is much more newsworthy and interesting. And recently, press secretary opened up his own account, but mostly he's using that whenever Japanese newspaper and magazine reported the scandal of Prime Minister Takaichi, then he tried to explain it's not true, that kind of thing. And one or two just good, successful public diplomacy operated by Japanese government officials is UK ambassador, Ambassador Suzuki. He has 220,000 followers in UK. And what he's doing is just, he goes to a local restaurant and drank a local brew beer. Wow, this is great. And he's really loved by people in United Kingdom. And about Japan-China relationship, actually, my understanding is that Prime Minister Takaichi does not hate China because they had a meeting in last October in South Korea. And as long as I know, Japan's side, Takaichi's side, really pushed China to meet him. And actually, after the meeting, it was late October, and early November, I went to Beijing, and I had a lunch with the Chinese MOFA people, and they talked very highly of Prime Minister Takaichi. Well, it's congratulations for the first female prime minister or something like that. And after that, just 2 days or 3 days later, she made remarks on Taiwan contingency issue, and it was definitely not intentional because of it happened because of her inexperience of diplomacy. So, but well, what happened is happened, and until last year, we are hoping that they will have China will host an APEC meeting October this year. So maybe 1 year later, there will be a shake hands with between Xi Jinping and Takaichi, but currently it's not likely to happen. And about arms race in this region, well, first of all, Japan is not going towards militarism or anything like that. China is strongly talking about that, but it's not going to militarism. But there is an arms race between countries in this region, and the reason, the biggest reason is the United States. If the United States leave or this region, then we have to protect ourselves by us. And another point is Trump administration is pushing very hard both Japan and South Korea to spend more on arms procurement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll finish the session, and please give a big applause to the panelists. Thank you so much.